Hello, and we are live. Welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning. Look at what a vacation can do for Matt Taibbi. Look how transformed he is. Who knew? He just needs to go on vacation to get in touch with his inner coloring. He grew his hair back. No, I jest. This is, of course, Aaron Mate, friend of the show, frequent guest, a Izzy Award-winning journalist, and the host of the Pushback YouTube show. Welcome, Aaron.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Hi. Thanks for coming on. How are our levels, everyone? If we sound the same audio-wise, more or less? You want to count to 10, Aaron?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right. Sounds good to me. What do you guys think? Let us know at Useful Idiots. I feel like I should be giving a number after I do that. But all right. Well, we have a lot in store for you. As people know, Monday mornings is no Taibbi today. Taibbi is on vacation, and we can chastise him together next time we're all together. But Taibbi is on vacation. We are blessed to have Aaron Mate. He's not just a replacement. He is actually someone who we would seek out anyway, and a great person to do the Monday morning with. And as people know, if it's Monday morning, it means that it's the day and time where Useful Idiots looks at the worst moments from the Sunday morning shows so that you don't have to watch them fully. And we're gonna give you a bunch of clips about Afghanistan. But first, we wanted to just catch you up on the latest vis-a-vis Joe Biden and Afghanistan and see if you can pick up a theme in how the media is treating him.
Poll also found that based in part on what's transpired in the last week, the majority of Americans, forgive me, I'm just the messenger, no longer consider you to be competent, focused, or effective at the job.
I haven't seen that poll.
It's out there on CBS this morning. What would you say to those Americans who no longer believe these
Look,
things?
I had a basic decision to make. I either withdraw America from a 20-year war that, depending on whose analysis you accept, cost us $150 million a day for 20 years or $300 million a day for 20 years, I carry this card with me every day, and who, in fact, where we lost 2,448 Americans dead and 20,722 wounded.
All right, so that's a clip from Biden from Sunday. And here's, lest you think the media has any interest in a certain narrative, Matt Wilson, and everyone say hi to Matt Wilson. Matt Wilson, could you show us the tweet by Bo, what's his name from CBS? Not Bo Jackson, I always want to say that. Bo Erickson. Dear White House staff, please share the below polling to POTUS. He said he had not seen it yet. And if you keep going down, you'll see that they link to, look at that, a CBS poll. Who would have thunk it? CBS journalist links to CBS poll, wants to make sure that Biden knows about this poll, which I think it's so funny because this new poll apparently shows that he is no longer, what is the actual quote, Biden job approval fails, handling of troop removals negative, but support for withdrawal remains, CBS News poll. And if you can scroll down, I just want to see the exact wording about the competence. Approval. Okay, so broader views of his qualities like effectiveness and competence, taking hits along. Sorry, I missed can you grow up back up? Taking hits along with it. Okay, let's see. Can we scroll down? All right. Let's see. Removal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan has gone very badly. It's 44%, somewhat badly, 30%, somewhat well, 21%, very well, 5%. Anything else that we should look at? I wonder how.
Well, they still quietly acknowledge that the majority of people support the action.
Right.
So the headline is supposed to be that they're criticizing the way in which it was carried out, but not whether or not they actually support the underlying action, which is still overwhelmingly positive. And Katie, it's so funny. It's so funny how usually the role of trashing Biden's is ours. Like this is the
It's
space
ours.
we've
That's
been
our lane.
occupying.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that like the roles have been switched this last week a little bit, where like, you know, Biden's traditional critics on the left who are always talking about his cognitive decline and all that stuff, which I don't really do, but a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
And now everyone's defending him, and the media who are always kissing his feet and like went so far as to like ignore Hunter Biden for like, you know, months and months and months when that whole story about Hunter Biden's laptop threatened Biden's chances of being elected. Like the media ignored that story and even claimed it was Russian disinformation. Now, the one time he does something positive, which is follow through on an agreement to withdraw U.S. troops from Afghanistan and end a war that hasn't just killed Americans, as Biden pointed out, but also, which he forgot to mention, has killed, you know, untold numbers of Afghan civilians. Now the media has a freak out, and people like Bo Erickson are snitching.
Yeah, there's such snitches. Stitches for snitches, guys.
It's crazy.
It's so crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, as you point out, Aaron, this could easily have been a, you know, breaking news or new poll, you know, overwhelming support for Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yeah. But of course, after a week of like nonstop coverage of how bad it's gone, you know, of course, the question is going to be framed. Well, how do you think the withdrawal has gone? Now, do you support it? And by the way, also, it could have gone so much worse.
I know, that's the other thing. Yeah,
this is a brutal war that's been going on for 20 years, and it could have ended with massacres of the Taliban's opponents, but it didn't.
Right.
And one of the reasons that it might not have ended so badly is because actually maybe there was some kind of tacit or explicit agreement behind the scenes we don't know about yet. Possibly not, but regardless, it could have gone way worse than it did. Way worse. It could have been horrible. But U.S. warmongers and the media can't see that. All they can see is the sight of U.S. no longer occupying and bombing a country, and to them, that elicits a freak out.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. And again, as you said, it's all about framing. They could just be focusing on how there wasn't a long, protracted war, you know, in response to this. Like there wasn't some, you know, really armed conflict between the Taliban and the puppet government. So it's all about framing, and it's very scary because even I, like, you know, no one is focusing on the. I mean, I think that in general, the United States, when it does the right thing, it does it in the wrong way because its heart is never in the right place. But I still think that could be framed as like, this is just the typical thing that happens. Sorry, I have to get a tissue. Did not plan this. I'm about to need a tissue. Hold on one second. Sorry.
Katie is visibly joining Boy Erickson. Katie is upset.
I'm getting emotional.
It's finally dawning on Katie that we were humiliated in Afghanistan, and we're no longer occupying this landlocked country where people have been dying for 20 years under our boot. And Katie's now finally joining Bo Erickson and the rest of the media in a moment of sadness about that we're no longer there.
I'm verklempt. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just. All right. So yeah, but you know, we could just be focusing on the fact that it's, you know, why haven't we looked at the people we did get out? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah. And why weren't we looking at this war when it was going on for 20 years and we were wasting, you know, billions of dollars on a war that was, you know, in my opinion, illegal, that we had no right to wage in the first place. And we were being lied to. We were even told, if it wasn't obvious for the 20 years, it was proven that we were being lied to with the Afghanistan papers in 2019, with the release of all these internal reports from the US government where everyone acknowledged we were lying. And that didn't elicit any outrage among the US media. Nothing. It got covered by the Washington Post and a few other places, but then it went away. And now we leave, and that elicits this meltdown.
Yeah. I'm just tweeting this out, by the way. See how transparent I am on this show?
We
you know, not everyone. Yes. Right.
If only the Pentagon had followed the Katie Halper transparency model.
I know, right? If only Bo. I mean, what a little. I'm sorry to use gendered language, but what a little bitch, Bo. What is it? Erickson is. Yeah. It's just like, Man up. Like, what a little snitch, as you said. Like, oh, here's that poll. Let's make sure Joe Biden sees this poll that we totally manufactured and are weaponizing to push a certain narrative. So, well, now that we've seen, and it is a very weird feeling to be like, this is a good point, honestly. Super patriot. 20 years of mayhem compared to a few days of an admittedly clusterfuck of a pullout. I think that's a fair way to put it. And as we'll see soon, I mean, how avoidable is that? We'll take a look into that.
Absolutely. And again, it could have been so much worse. I mean, sure, people are going to suffer, but the alternative is not withdrawing. And again, there are so many worse alternatives that could have happened. It could have been so much worse. And I think we should be thankful that it wasn't.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's go to the next clip, which is from what's next? Which are we showing next? You let us know,
Fox News Sunday.
Fox News Sunday. Oh yeah, and shout out to the person who gave us this clip. And that person is, wait for it. Where's that person? 2020 Burner. Thanks for the tip, 2020 Burner. Everyone follow 2020 Burner. All right.
And whether you love Bernie Sanders or you love Burning Man, whatever it is.
Exactly. Or you like grateful. Pyromania in general.
Or just pyromania in general. Yeah, we're grateful.
We are. I don't condone Burning Man, but yeah, we're grateful.
Me either.
Oh, there's a little reference to Anna Kasparian, I think.
Thank you, Virtuoso. Thank you.
All right, we got the clip.
Mr. Secretary, does the president not know what's going on?
Wait, can you play from the beginning? Wilson, sorry, because we gotta show exactly what Chris Wallace says, because it's kind of funny. All right.
Mr. Secretary, does the president not know what's going on?
This is an incredibly emotional time for many of us, and including allies and partners who've been shoulder to shoulder with us in Afghanistan for 20 years, at high cost to themselves as well as to us. They stood with us after 9/11, invoked Article 5 of NATO for the first time. An attack on one is an attack on all. And we've been there together. But I've got to tell you this, Chris, from the get-go, I've spent more time with our NATO partners in Brussels virtually from before the president made his decision to when he made his decision to every time since. We've been working very, very closely together. We've gotten the G7 together, NATO together, the UN Security Council together. We had 113 countries, thanks to our diplomacy, put out a clear understanding of the Taliban's requirements to let people leave the country.
Respectfully, look, I'm not questioning whether or not the allies have a right to complain. I'm not questioning whether or not al-Qaeda has a presence. The president said al-Qaeda is gone. It's not gone. The president said he's not heard any criticism from the allies. There's been a lot of criticism from the allies. Words matter, and the words of the president matter most.
Chris, all I can tell you is what I've heard. And again, this is a powerfully emotional time for a lot of allies and partners, as it is for me, as it is for us. But I've also heard this. I've heard across the board deep appreciation and thanks from allies and partners for everything that we've done to bring our allies and partners out of harm's way. This has been a remarkable part of the effort. I've seen them stand up, step up to help out, including, as I said, agreements with more than 24 countries now to help on transit. And beyond that, we're very focused together on the way forward, including the way forward in Afghanistan, and setting very clear expectations for the Taliban in the days, weeks, and months.
So it's an emotional time, Aaron.
It's an emotional time. I'm just picturing Blinken bringing all the allies together, the G7, NATO, and they all just cry in a room together. Everyone just has an honest cry.
Yeah.
And they share their feelings about how emotional they are about no longer being military occupiers in a country that doesn't want them, and how hard that is.
And they pass a pillow so that they don't speak over each other. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and again, this is a weird time where I feel like I'm not like allying with Biden or Tony Blinken, but it is a weird time where I'm more angry at the person asking the question than I am,
You know, it's very similar to what they would do to Trump when they didn't like him, like blurting out some honesty about like NATO when Trump was saying we don't need NATO, or when he was talking about cooperating with Russia. Everyone would be like, what about our allies?
Right.
He's letting down our allies, like these mythical allies who just want the US to like dominate the world and bomb and occupy people. That's the function that the role of the allies play in the discourse of corporate media. So it's the same thing here, because like we can't fathom this like outcome of us leaving a country in defeat. We have to like displace our frustration onto these mythical people who really want us to stay, and in this case it's our allies.
Yeah, it's our allies, it's the women.
Yes, the women want us to stay. Yes,
the women want to stay, which isn't to like, downplay the Taliban's treatment of women, but as I had Mike Preisner on the Katie Halper show, and as he pointed out very wisely, the majority of civilians killed in Afghanistan were killed by the puppet government and or through U.S. airstrikes.
Yeah. And look, these people do not care about Afghan women. They've made that very clear. If you go back not just 20 years, but the last 40 years, there was a Soviet-backed government in Afghanistan that had its problems, but under them, rights for women were exponentially better. That's not even a question. It was the U.S. It was the U.S. that armed the Al Qaeda and what became the Taliban, the Mujahideen, who treat women this way, and it was them who helped bring them to power. The Soviet government, the Soviet-backed government, even survived for a couple of years after the Soviet Union left, but then the Taliban took over, and Clinton basically supported the Taliban takeover. So there was no problem for the U.S. when the Taliban was oppressing women right before 9/11. After 9/11, they needed an excuse to come and invade the country instead of trying to negotiate with the Taliban and go after Al Qaeda in a different way than an outright military invasion. But the Bush administration rejected that, and so that's why women are in this position today.
Also, Aaron, you since we're talking about media coverage of Afghanistan, I wanted to ask you about this really excellent segment that you did the other day. I believe you did it. You released it Sunday. I'm not sure when you recorded it, with two veterans. Can you just summarize their perspective and their take, since it's one that we don't hear ever?
Well, it's amazing. You have people who served, including one guy, Matthew Ho, who served in the State Department in Afghanistan, and he resigned in 2009 because he was so opposed to what the U.S. was doing, and he was so opposed to the surge, the Obama-Petraeus surge in Afghanistan. And Matthew Ho, when he resigned, he got a bit of media attention, but since then he's been basically disappeared from media. He just hasn't been listened to. And when the Afghanistan papers came out that I mentioned before, these internal documents showing the actual views of the U.S. officials behind the war, basically vindicated everything he was saying. They all admitted they were lying and misleading the public. And so it's just incredible that, for all the talk we have about, respecting our veterans and listening to their veterans and supporting the troops, we completely ignore those who were on the inside and who are just going against the official narrative. And the guys I interviewed, Matthew Ho and Danny Sherjan, are examples of that. Matthew Ho resigned from the State Department. Before that, he was a Marine in Afghanistan. And Danny Sherjan, he led a battalion in Afghanistan, and he can talk about how just corrupt and crazy it was, and how just how the U.S. just kept pursuing a failed strategy of they would rotate out people every single year. So you'd bring one group of people in to pursue the same failed strategy, and then they'd leave, and then you bring back a next group, a fresh crop, and they do it again, and people would get killed on all sides. And of course, the whole thing was just a racket for contractors in DC, where people in the suburbs of DC and Virginia got really, really rich off of this. There's an article in Foreign Policy that says that 80 to 90% of the money that the U.S. spent on Afghanistan was recycled back into the U.S. economy, and virtually all of that is for military contractors. So it was a racket, and it was the racketeers who got a voice in U.S. media, not those who actually served in the war, like Matthew Ho and Danny Sherjan, who were warning against just how awful it was. So
Right.
so that's who I spoke to.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Shout out to, again, it's weird. Shout out to Tony Blinken. Although it is still a funny response, right? It's an emotional time. It's kind of a dodge.
Yeah, God, is there a lamer figure than Tony Blinken? He's so he's
Sucks
so
so bad.
lame.
But
He's so
don't
lame.
let it get lost, Aaron. As Samantha Power pointed out, don't let this get lost. Tony Blinken is a new father. She literally tweeted, she tried to identity politics fatherhood. He's a new father, young kids, and that should not get lost. It's like, and she's like, it'll be great to have a working, dad. It's like, that's not even the thing. Since when do dads not go to work? It's moms who don't go to work. Like, get your talking points straight, lady. And that's the best you can do, is that he's a dad. Representation matters, guys. I mean, you know who else was a dad? Like, Goebbels was a dad.
Yes.
With young kids.
And that's Blinken's job, is to kill children. Literally. That's his job. That's his job, is to kill children. Kill children who live in the states that the U.S. wants to destabilize or overthrow. That's Tony Blinken's job. And then go on TV and pretend to be a sensitive guy. That's his job.
Yeah, it's awful. All right. Well, next, let's give our next clip.
And said on Monday.
And this one is, of course, from Meet the Press, and we got great friend of show, Jake Sullivan.
Jake Sullivan.
Chuck Todd.
The president said on Monday, you plan for every contingency. If this is a plan, it doesn't look like it's been well thought out. Did you really plan for this contingency, or is this the one contingency you didn't plan for?
You know, Chuck, I know that the scenes around the airport are heartbreaking. Large crowds of people wanting to leave. I know that there is complexity and there is turbulence on the ground in Kabul. And it's very risky and dangerous because there's a genuine threat from ISIS-K. That is the reality of what we are up against. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that reality. But Chuck, let's just review what has happened. A week after Kabul fell, we have 30,000 people evacuated from the country. We have control of an airport in a city controlled by the other side after the collapse of the government. We are moving people through and out, thousands of people at a time. We have agreements with 26 nations around the world to logistically move Afghans and Americans and third country nationals out of the country into air bases throughout neighboring countries and further afield. All of that within 7 days. No plan survives first contact with reality. No plan can account for every contingency that occurs at a tactical level on a day-to-day basis. What you do is you adjust, and we've adjusted. And while we are continuing to face genuine challenges, we believe we are making progress.
I like that. I'm going to use that. No plan survives first contact. I'm just going to use that like in general if I'm late somewhere.
Yeah. No plan. Exactly. You're like half hour late. Hey, listen, no plan survives first contact with reality.
And I'm adjusting. I told you I'm running late. What else do you want?
I guarantee that went through like 5 drafts in the writer's room in Jake Sullivan's office. And then they landed on it. No plan survives first contact with reality. And
it's a good one, though. You got to admit. Yeah. And again, guys, shout out. Let's see who. Let us know on Twitter if you actually use that now that you've seen that. I'm going to try to use that excuse this week.
I just love how Chuck Todd's getting adversarial now for the first time.
I mean, a couple decades late, but yeah, I agree. It's so ridiculous. All right. So that's now we're going to go through trigger warning. We have a bunch of Chuck Todd, but we got to because it kind of captures everything that's wrong with our media. This is, of course, Meet the Press. So what do we got next on Meet the Press? Who are we talking to next? Liz Cheney, I believe. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, okay, actually, let's go to this week, which usually with George Stephanopoulos. We have a special guest host.
Martha Raddatz,
who cried over, what was it, Michael Flynn on live television? Yes,
and she also called Hugo Chavez Cesar Chavez.
I mean, look, she's very well read in leftist farm worker organizing, and that is her North Star. She, right. She has a photo of Cesar Chavez on her refrigerator. Yeah. So magnet, not actual photo, magnet photo. So what are you gonna do? She just got Cesar Chavez in the mind. I actually dated someone once who looks a lot like him. PK writes, by the way, did you notice that Anthony rarely blinking? It's true. Next
Yes.
time we watch, yeah.
And my question every time is he a scaredy cat or is he a sociopath? It's one of the two. If you rarely blink, I think. Are you scared or are you a sociopath? And if you're a sociopath, you're probably not that scared.
Right.
So I go with
That's
sociopath.
true. Yeah, I
But
agree.
he does look scared though. He does look like he's
And you
like,
can't
are
really
they-
be both of those things.
No, you can't. But he does look like, are they gonna catch me this time that I'm lying through my teeth? I'm a
Right.
fraud.
If
Maybe it is
yeah.
scared.
So what would the non-blink? It's also, I'm trying to think of how non-blinking would help conceal. Like maybe if he's lying through his eyes
Mhm.
instead of his teeth. I don't know.
Well, if you're a sociopath and like you just like you're so focused on the other person because you have no interior world. You're just
Right.
like, but if you're scared too, you're also shook, So it's to
Yeah,
me, it's
he
one of
looks
those two.
shook.
Yeah.
Shook, but without shook. No, non-blinking shook Lincoln. Wait, Blinken is his name. Non-Blinken shook Blinken. Yeah. Also, question from John Moore. What are your thoughts on the Russia and China are going to come in and fill the vacuum we left in Afghanistan? Probably worst takeout there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what's funny is like, how do you define vacuum? Are Russian and Chinese troops going to come in and occupy and destroy
Right.
the country like the U.S. did? No. Will they make deals? Probably, sure. I mean, they're a lot closer to Afghanistan than the
Yeah.
U.S. is, so it makes sense that they're going to have some kind of influence there. And they, Russia's had some relations with the Taliban for a while now, so yeah, I'm sure Russia will take advantage. But in terms of the vacuum, the U.S. defined vacuum is military occupation and bombardment, and no, Russia and China will not be doing that.
Yeah. That's our lane. Okay, so let's go to, oh, thank you, Gene. I love this Katie Aaron team up. Let's go to the George Stephanopoulos. You see, Martha, what is it? Raditz?
Raditz, yeah.
She is the Aaron Mate of this week.
That's right.
Because she's
That's
filling
right.
in for George Stephanopoulos, who's never at work. I don't know. Every time we review the media and we do a clip from this week on ABC, Stephanopoulos is absent. So
That's so funny.
maybe he's hurt
Well,
because we call him what's it called? Snuffleupagus. Yeah.
when I was preparing for this session today, I studied the oeuvre of Martha Raditz just to get into the zone, and she's been very helpful towards my preparation for today.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah.
All right. Let's take it away.
And told our George Stephanopoulos that he doesn't think this exit could have been handled any better way.
She's
That
quoting
chaos
Biden.
would ensue no matter what. Do you agree with that?
I agree that if the government
And this is Lloyd Austin, who's the head of the
collapses to the
Pentagon.
degree that it did, if the security forces evaporate at the speed that they did, you will clearly have chaos, and that's what we saw.
So can you play that again? Sorry, I just want to. And I said he's the head of the Pentagon because that's what he's the Department of Defense. But I don't know if you remember, because he certainly didn't. Biden kind of couldn't remember who he was. He was like that guy or the Pentagon over there.
My defense secretary, he always forgets his name. It's so funny. It's so funny.
It's so funny, yeah. And this guy's, and again, so let's just play this again. Sorry. So Raditz starts out quoting what Biden said to the guy who should be there, George Stephanopoulos. But
The president told our George Stephanopoulos that he doesn't think this exit could have been handled any better way, that chaos would ensue no matter what. Do you agree with that?
I agree that if the government collapses to the degree that it did, if the security forces evaporate at the speed that they did, you will clearly have chaos, and that's what we saw.
so I play that, and again, it's weird to kind of agree with Lloyd Austin, but I play that because that is another way you could frame it, right? Like that's the way another way the media could frame it as, given what a huge transition this is, and given the huge replacement that's happening here, of course there's going to be chaos. I mean, it's kind of like what you were saying, Aaron,
Yeah.
with it could be a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
So again, feels kind of weird to be kind of agreeing with Austin, with my Secretary of Defense, but you got to do it.
And this whole dynamic, it captures that that corporate media journalists, they're not just loyal to the Democratic Party. This is something that Glenn Greenwald has pointed out. They're actually, at this point, even more loyal to the national security state. So whatever the hawkish position is, which is the default position of the national security state, they're going to take it. So in this case, they have to. This is where they get adversarial, is when we haven't been, where our warmongering posture has taken a hit. You know, it looks bad for the U.S. empire and our ability to colonize people to see such a quick collapse of the Afghan government that the U.S. was propping up. So you can see the outrage on these journalists' faces, on these so-called journalists' faces. And so it's in this weird position where now even some government officials have to like push back on the journalists with, you know, and try to like steer them off of being so hawkish. Now, Austin could have said we handled it great, and he didn't. And I think he's actually kind of throwing Biden a little bit under the bus there, a little bit, because
I thought so too, actually. Yeah,
because the Pentagon has been resisting this Afghan withdrawal for a long time. When Trump signed an order to withdraw all U.S. troops by the end of last year, by the end of 2020, and that was basically sabotaged by the Pentagon. There's a report on that by Gareth Porter at the Gray Zone, and David Ignatius also reported that too at the Washington Post. And now Austin wasn't there then, but he's a part of that club, and the Pentagon has been trying to keep this war going forever. And when Biden made the decision to withdraw U.S. troops earlier this year, all of them, Austin was among the Pentagon leaders who was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure, Mr. President?" They actually tried to convince him to backtrack and to leave a residual force. But Biden, unlike Trump, didn't get intimidated. And this speaks to, by the way, what a political chump Trump is, because Trump has said all these things, these anti-war things, and he won the presidency largely by pretending to be against intervention. But every time it required actually following through on something, he always got intimidated by Mike Pompeo, by John Bolton, by the Pentagon. So, Biden actually did what Trump was willing to say he was going to do publicly, but never actually willing to follow through on. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm just glad she kept it together and didn't cry this time, which she did on election night when Trump won.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's go back to trigger warning. We're going back to Chuck Todd.
Was nation building a step too far? I mean, was that? I in some ways, I understand.
Pause.
You have
I'm sorry, I should have done a double trigger warning. It's with Liz Cheney, who, by the way, whose father you may have heard of, Dick Cheney. Okay.
In some ways, I understand you have to build some institutions if you want to create that stability, but it didn't work in Vietnam. It didn't work here.
Look, you have to build those institutions. I think that's exactly the point. And I think we have to be very specific. There's no question that there were mistakes. There were strategies that were pursued that didn't work, strategies that were pursued that didn't have the resources they needed. But for the United States to be in a position where we need to ensure Afghanistan is not a safe haven, that means that we've got to provide the support necessary to continue to have the Afghans bear the brunt of the fight. It means that we've got to help to build the institutions that can withstand, the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban threat that continues. So this isn't about building, a democracy that looks like the United States. It's about what can we do to maintain stability so that we don't have further terrorist attacks from Afghan soil.
Okay, Aaron, break it down. Tell us your thoughts on this.
Well, if you read Manufacturing Consent by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky, published in 1988, I think, they point out that the way the U.S. media creates the illusion of free debate and democracy is that they have debate and dissent, but within very constrained parameters. So the furthest left you can go, the furthest you can criticize government policy and be allowed to speak, on Meet the Press and other places, is you can say that the strategy didn't work. And so in the case of Vietnam, by the end, people were allowed to say that the strategy didn't work. You're not allowed to question the premise of the war and ask, do we have the right to invade a foreign country and mass murder its civilians? And so that's what, despite Vietnam being it ended almost 50 years ago, this country is so backward that we have not advanced beyond that stage where the farthest you can go is criticizing the conduct of the war, the way it was carried out, not our right to do it. And that's what Chuck Todd is displaying here. So he mentions Vietnam and he invokes that to raise the same, just tired talking point, constrained talking point about Afghanistan. How was our strategy? Should we be engaging in nation building? That's also the thing. You can't say the truth about what we're doing. You can't say that we're destroying a country and pillaging it by enriching, military contractors. You have to frame it as nation building, as if we're contributing something to Afghanistan. So Chuck Todd is the ultimate example of just a corporate media.
More like Cuck Todd.
More like Cuck Todd. Yeah. And Liz Cheney talking about, we have to make sure they don't launch attacks from Afghan soil on us again. How many attacks from Afghan soil have been launched on the U.S. in the last 20 years? That's a moot issue. It happened once on 9/11, and again, there were ways to deal with that aside from invasion. The Taliban made offers to actually hand over bin Laden if he could go to another country, if he could serve, if the U.S. could provide some evidence that he was involved, all these things. The Bush administration just rejected all that, so we don't negotiate with you. The Taliban even offered up its own leader, Mullah Omar, and said if he could serve his prison sentence in a Muslim country. And the U.S. rejected that too and decided to keep waging this war for 20 years.
It's so disgusting. So, yeah, and as you pointed out, that's the way you critique it when you're lib, right? It's like, oh, the execution, oh, the strategic mistakes. And also you can see that mistakes were made, so you sound like you're being fair and balanced,
Yeah. I'm not saying mistakes were made. I know that.
Exactly. Look, it wasn't perfect. Look, I'm the first to admit that. Also, I wonder why, Aaron, why do you think she's not bringing up subcontractors? Contractors, I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's how her family made its money with Halliburton.
Yeah.
And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. The Cheney case is a good example. Cheney, her father, was almost killed in a suicide attack at a military air base in Afghanistan, and they completely hid that from the public until the Afghanistan papers revealed that. But Dick Cheney came very close to getting killed in Afghanistan in a suicide bombing, but that was one of the things that they hid from us because it showed how badly it was going.
Right. Oh man, he also almost got killed in the suicide mission when he shot a bird. Remember that? He shot his friend in the face.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God, that guy is like such
lucky
a
guy.
Lucky guy. Yeah. Also, lucky he was able to not go to Vietnam. You know what he did? To not go to Vietnam? He coincidentally got married right away and had a kid right away. But the way he now presents that, it's not war dodging. And by the way, I don't think I wouldn't have fought in Vietnam either. The brave thing to do would have been like family friend Dennis Mora and the other two men of Fort Hood 3 to go to jail over that. But Cheney, as he puts it, he had other priorities at the time, like knocking up his wife to get out of
family first.
Family first. Like Chris Cuomo.
Yeah.
Oh God,
that's
family
so funny.
first, Jesus. Yeah. All right, so that's Liz Cheney. Now, lest you think that, as you said, Aaron, there's a lot of debate, there's a lot of dissent, because we travel the ideological spectrum all the way from Liz Cheney all the way to the following guests. And let's see, who's the first one we got, Wilson? Is it Andrea Mitchell, friend of show, Andrea Mitchell, who really lays out the media conflict of interest that we all know and love, because Andrea Mitchell's husband, life partner, spouse, bae, boo, is none other than Alan Greenspan of the Fed. Okay.
Look, our allies are furious. And here he went to Brussels and said, America is back and I'm not Donald Trump and I'm not going to pull the rug out from under you, as Trump did in Syria. And now they feel that the rug was pulled out from under them. You hear criticism from the Brits, from Germany, from France. And that is really hurting American position overseas. Mm-hmm. And these cables, the dissent memo and these cables now from the Afghan employees at the State Department we got in the last 24 hours are devastating. We have destroyed morale that he was rebuilding I mean, it is a real problem for America's leadership abroad.
Okay, so who will, but the allies, who
But the
will think
allies.
of the allies? It's
But
like
the
the
allies.
women, then the
Yeah.
allies, and it's really going to harm, our relations moving forward. What's going to happen? Like walk me through that, Andrea. What's going to happen? What's going to deteriorate?
What's actually happening is the British are having a freak out because they have this like complex of being like the junior poodle of the US, and they invested some of their troops and money in Afghanistan, and Biden's walking away from it. And so who are like the British troops going to push around now to make them
Right.
seem like they're tough guys? And so they're freaking out, and they're blaming Biden for it, because now they can't like push around poor Afghan villagers anymore to feel manly and feel tough. And really, their problem all along is they're a lapdog of the US, but they can't address that. So they need to displace their frustration onto poor foreign civilians like in Afghanistan. So that's the basis of the British freakout. And Andrea Mitchell identifies so much with that mentality that we need to be bullying and brutalizing and killing civilians abroad, that she's willing to, throw Biden under the bus to achieve that objective, and to lament the fact that we're no longer doing it in Afghanistan. It's so funny. It's so funny. And what's crazy is like her umbrage over the cables, these damning cables. Where was Andrea Mitchell when WikiLeaks put out so many cables showing what the US was doing in Afghanistan? How the CIA was plotting. There's even WikiLeaks reminded us yesterday on Twitter, they tweeted this, that there was a CIA cable that said that we should use the issue of women suffering in Afghanistan to manufacture support for the war. They laid it out explicitly what their cynical strategy was. And so where's Andrea Mitchell's coverage of that? And where was her coverage of the Afghanistan papers? All these internal Pentagon US documents showing leaders acknowledging they were lying to the public.
Aaron, she's too upset about all of this stuff. She can't, if she goes there, she's going to fall apart. You can see she's close to tears. So
Yes,
actually doing her job would be just too much emotional labor. And who are you to ask her to do that free emotional labor? When I say free, I mean free minus the, how much did anyone tell? Let us know, fam. How much does she make? How much is she paid by MSNBC? That would be good to know. A lot.
Andrea Mitchell owes you nothing.
Yeah. Give your money to Andrea Mitchell. That would be good. We should do that. Wow, Aaron is nothing like Anna Kasparian told me he was. I don't know. He's been denying genocide left and right, celebrating the murder of children left and right. Yeah. It's just in a very coded, subtle language.
Yes, very coded.
Yeah. That only exists in Anna Kasparian's head.
By the way, Alan Greenspan, Andrea Mitchell's husband, whenever I hear of him, I always think of the time when he bragged before Congress that his policies were causing, quote, greater worker insecurity, which meant that people weren't leaving their job. People were staying in their jobs if they had them, because there's greater worker insecurity because wages weren't high enough for people to be able to leave jobs and be confident enough to hold out for something better. Greater worker insecurity. That's what Alan Greenspan bragged about.
Little humble brag from Alan Greenspan. Exactly. Do you think it would be really great if he had been able to claim credit for hunger insecurity, food insecurity?
Well, that came with what he was bragging about.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he was bragging about.
Yeah. Next time we'll play the Alan Greenspan being eviscerated by Bernie, because if we have time at the end, but I'm not sure we do. How is her name not Andrea Greenspan? Oh, come on, guys. I mean, my mom's name is Nora Eisenberg, not Nora Halper. We're not gonna criticize her for things that are actually good. And people were saying Mrs. Alan Greenspan. We should call Greenspan Mr. Andrea Mitchell.
That's right. That's right.
And a German I highlighted before, but German. I want to listen to Germans, and they're our allies. And we had a German in the chat saying that people hate this shit. We Germans hate this shit. So that's good to know. And who the hell is Tony Blair? He should be living underground with Dick Cheney, Henry Kissinger, Ari Fleischman, just to name a few people who need to be living in a bunker, in my opinion, a bunker for their own safety. And he's out and about. This guy who lied about Iraq and Afghanistan and destroyed the Labour Party in England. He looks like a lot like a mouse. That's not his fault, but that's just, it deserves comment.
That is not his fault. That is not his
That's
fault.
not his fault. It's neither here nor there. But Blyer, that's good. Blyer, yeah. All right, let's go to the next clip from Chuck Todd. Who do we have next? Who do we have a comment
Is your
from?
beat here?
Oh, okay. This is great. Helene Cooper, who is a Pentagon person it's her beat for the New York Times. It's funny. Chuck Todd, I can't remember if it's in this clip or earlier. He's like, it's your beat. Well, it's everyone's beat here at the table. It's all of your beat. Like, imagine you had someone who was like an anti-war person.
Yeah, no.
That would never happen.
No.
Okay. Let's play this clip.
Helene, I want to unpack Pentagon is your beat here. Everybody here, I think, in this table has Pentagon as their beat these days. But
thanks for outing.
It was the military that said close Bagram first. That's what Jake Sullivan seemed to indicate, they followed military advice on that decision.
There's a lot of blame shifting going on at this point. President Biden wanted the optic of the American military leaving Afghanistan. When he announced in April that we were withdrawing, he was talking about the military. The military will say that you can't withdraw and stay at Bagram. You're either going to withdraw or you stay. And they had been pushing for us to stay for, as we know, 20 years now. And so there's so many different layers of sort of finger pointing that you see starting to go on at the moment. But the one thing that I feel like this whole conversation on Afghanistan constantly doesn't reckon with is what some people in the military would call the original sin, and that is the decision that President Biden made that withdrawing 3,500 troops from Afghanistan, rejecting the advice of his defense secretary and his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to leave 3,000 to 4,500 people there, was not going to lead to the insane chaos that we are seeing now. A lot of people at the Pentagon believe that there's no way you would have gotten, once you make that decision, how do you then avoid this? Because every other way that you look around, you take the diplomats out first, that triggers the fall of the government. Right. You start taking out the SIVs, that triggers the fall of the government. It all becomes a confidence thing. Once you remove the military, people at the Pentagon will tell you you're done for.
So, okay, what do you think of that, Aaron?
Original sin.
The original sin is, wait for it,
ending the war, not starting the war.
Not starting the war. That's like saying the original sin in the Bible is what? Is getting kicked out of Eden, which I like that. It's not the snake thing. I actually do like that version, but it's not really. Well, I guess you could. No, actually, I'm standing by that, but it is that's an off-brand interpretation of the Bible. That's revisionist. That's clearly not what the writers of the Bible, of the Torah, wanted us to think. Praise be upon them. The whole lesson from that is that Adam and Eve fucked up. So in this case, the whole lesson from Afghanistan should be that, like, that Bush fucked up, which these people like to say usually, and pretend that Obama had nothing to do with it, pretend that was the good war that we just fucked up a little bit because of Bush. And then we fucked up a little bit because of strategic things. I'm not saying we didn't make mistakes, etc. But that the original sin is actually to start pulling out.
I mean, you go back, if you can see beyond just the point of view of military leaders who want to continue a war for their own personal ideology and their own personal profit, because if they keep the war going, they'll probably get broken off with a board seat at a military manufacturer after they leave the service. You can see beyond that point of view. The original sin might be starting the war, might then be rejecting Taliban offers to end the war. The Taliban basically surrendered, but the Bush administration refused to accept it. And one of the reasons, by the way, Scott Horton points this out, who's a great writer and anti-war voice, and he's written a lot about Afghanistan, is that if the Bush administration had ended the Afghan war very early, that would have given the impression to the public that the war on terror was won, and that would have impeded the Bush administration's ability to take it to Iraq. So that's a major reason why the U.S. stayed in Afghanistan for so long when Bush could have ended it, is because that would have hurt the ability to take it then to Iraq, because that would have created the impression that the war on terror had been won. Our objectives had been had been realized, because it's hard to argue that we're fighting Osama bin Laden in Iraq if we've already defeated him in Afghanistan, where he actually was. So, and then you have another original sin, which is Obama's decision to double down on the war, even though everyone knew that it was lost. And that's why Matthew Ho, who I talked about earlier, a State Department official, resigned, and on and on and on and on and on. But to them, no. But to people whose agenda is to manufacture profit for military contractors and to feed the ideological worldview that we have to be bullying and bombarding other nations, then this is the original sin, is to end the war. That's a very revealing statement from a supposed journalist.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's like they're really saying the quiet parts out loud. It was stunning when I heard that. I was like, wait, what? That's the original sin?
Yeah.
That's it? Like, yeah. I mean, I guess it's like they know their audience. They're reading the room. And it's interesting that, like, that kind of much like Chuck Todd said, your beat is the Pentagon. Well, it's everyone's beat at this table. Like, again, just own it. Just own the manufacturing of consent. Just own being a stenographer for the Pentagon slash being a stenographer for the stenographers of that. Although, as Mike Preisner pointed out when he came on my show, the Katie Halper show, there is a bit of a disconnect now for like the first time between the Pentagon, not the first time, but given that the Pentagon has been, it's Biden's Pentagon now, and they are pulling out, but then you have the war industry and the media not like opposing that.
But she noted that the generals tried to convince Biden to stay. Right. And ultimately, they could choose to ignore him, but they chose not. But that's a tough thing to do. That's basically a military coup. So they ultimately went along with it. But the point is, they really didn't want to, and now they're still they're taking shots at him via their stenographers, like this New York Times reporter.
Yeah, awful. It's disturbing because she has a very nice person's face. She looks like a nice person, unlike the other people at that table. I'm just being honest. So, just being honest about it. But someone says, let's see, we could easily end the military-industrial complex with a 99.99 tax on war profits.
That's right.
Jesus Christ. What are we going to do about all of this? I don't know. Why would they own it, Katie? Do you expect honesty from these people? No, my point is they're owning it. They're owning it because there's never because to them, there's nothing wrong about that. There's nothing wrong about having a table full of Pentagon beat reporters. Yeah, I did say that he had kind eyes, Osama bin Laden. I'm just being honest. You got to admit these things because it makes life hard. Just like like Leni Riefenstahl makes good films. You gotta reckon with that. You gotta reckon with the fact that Helene Cooper has a nice person face, and Osama bin Laden had kind eyes. I'm not saying he's a kind person. He just had them. Yeah. Anyway, well, any final thoughts? Because this was a really, really great stream.
Well, I'm just worried about which poor country the U.S. will take revenge on, because Biden now has to show he's a tough guy.
Right.
And the way you show you're a tough guy in U.S. politics is by beating up on the most vulnerable people, like Reagan attacking Grenada and Nicaragua and other places that, that just can't defend themselves. So, Reagan did it via dirty war. But anyway, so I think the target will be Syria. There's at least 900 troops there, probably U.S. troops there, probably more. There's no reason for the U.S. to be there. The only reason is to punish Syrians for the fact that their government won the dirty war. So I think Syria. I fear that Syria will now face the brunt of the apoplectic outrage amongst the Beltway, the fact that the U.S. gave up one of its military occupations. So I think. I suspect that will lead to a doubling down on the Syria occupation, which is just as criminal, just as pointless, and just as damaging to the local population.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And in fact, Biden, I think he kind of laid out where they were going to invade next. I made a little clip of this, by the way. In the speech that he gave last week, he was saying, we got to focus on the threats that, the terrorist threat has metastasized. And then he goes through Somalia, talks about Syria, and of course, Asia and Africa in general. So that's an interesting, yeah. All right. Oh, look, what's that comment? That was someone pays 666. Let's see. We got to read that. The media reaction to the end of Afghan occupation is proof of the deep state control of the flow of news. Goebbels would be proud. I mean, don't let it get lost. Goebbels was a new father. A young father. So before we trash Goebbels, much like Abe Lincoln, Tony Blinken. Sorry, I didn't even mean to say that. Tony Blinken.
Well, same thing.
Same thing. Lincoln, honest Abe. Lincoln, honest.
Yeah. Honest Blink. Honest Tony. Honest Blink.
Honest Tony. Yeah. By the way, yes, I know that his father apparently was like saved by a GI, and his stepfather, I believe, was saved.
Yeah.
From the Holocaust.
Yes.
So I say that knowing full well, you can't cancel me because I know that. Although I guess it makes it easier for me to be canceled. But Goebbels.
But then his stepfather, by the way, went on to become a huge supporter of the Israeli government, which murdered plenty of Palestinian kids. So, and Blinken was very much inspired by that. Apparently, he says, but by his stepfather's attachment to Israel, and that's why.
Right.
That's why as Israel continues to, brutalize, massacre Palestinians in Gaza, the Biden administration continues to stand by and rearm it and support it.
Yeah. Terrible.
And again, and do any of these people ever mention that? Someone tweeted this the other day that, when there was a day of protests in Cuba, that was like news for like a couple of weeks. When U.S. armed Israeli soldiers are massacring Palestinian kids, it's not even acknowledged.
No, yeah. And in fact, speaking of this, Holocaust survivors, stand by for a really great interview that I did with Gabor Mate.
That's coming up on the
Aaron, on the Katie Halbert show. Yeah, father of Aaron Mate. And I'm not revealing anything. You've interviewed him, but without hiding the fact that he's your father. And he has a very different perspective from being basically, also surviving the Holocaust in Hungary.
Yes, he does. He does. Yeah.
But,
well, I can't wait for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be great. And it's really sad because I recorded it a while ago. And the sad thing about this is that it's timeless, like the discussion that I had with Gabor, which is about, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and Zionist propaganda. So anyway, but
that's also a function of speaking to a Mate. That if you speak to a Mate, timeless.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, it's the Mate timelessness bump.
Yeah, like if you recorded this interview secretly and then aired it like 5 years from now, people would be like, "This is just as relevant to the present moment as it was to the week when the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan." Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and thank you for this, Nicanolodian. Aaron spitting fire. Love it. Thanks, Katie. You're welcome. I lit the flame or something that let him spit it. I don't know. Well, this has been great. You guys, make sure you subscribe to Useful Idiots on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to us if you can throw down a shekel or two to our Substack, where you get bonus content, extended interviews, and all sorts of extra goodies. And that's at usefulidiots.substack.com, as you probably know. And I think that's it for now. Make sure you check out Aaron's show, Pushback, at the Gray Zone. It's amazing. A ruble or two. Yes, that's more on brand. Yeah.
Yes.
And people are saying, and apologies that we didn't warn you that we were missing. I mean, we warned you on Monday morning that we weren't going to have our regular Useful Idiots, but next time we'll warn you on our regular Useful Idiots. And sorry, I didn't warn you that I wasn't going to be streaming. I'm actually streaming right after this. I'm doing a self-care, doing some radical self-care stuff. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Katie's getting into the self-care, like the
I am.
Are you becoming like a leftist wellness influencer?
Well, I guess I am, and I'm trying. The logo, the motto is self-care for all, because I'm tired of self-care just being something that rich people can get.
Yeah.
And the personal is political, so come by. I'm doing it right at the youtube.com/the Katie Halper Show.
Very cool.
Yeah. And Aaron does do streams at the Gray Zone. Someone just suggested that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do them that much, but we do them occasionally, and
oh right, live.
Maybe I'll start doing self-care streams. Who knows?
Yeah, you can come on the self-care stream. And yeah, I didn't stream yesterday. My guarantee is Thursdays, and then Sundays are kind of a bonus, but I'll give you guys a heads up too. And all right. Poor Matt Taibbi. I hope he doesn't see this and get upset. We're talking about our show so much. It's okay. His Substack does okay. All right. Thank you guys. See you next Monday. Thanks, Matt Wilson. And also see you later this week when we release our Useful Idiots regular podcast and YouTube video. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.